Hi everyone, a very warm welcome to all lovely professional university Edu-Webinars. My name is Dalvinder Kaur and I'm your host for today's webinar. As I can see, people are still joining, so let's wait for a few more minutes so that everyone can join. Till then, let me take you all on a virtual tour of our beautiful campus. So here it is. So much for watching this video and thanks everyone for calling. Let's talk about the call responses. Let me talk about the C option. Is this video real or AI? No, this video is a absolutely real video. No AI making this. The people who wants to see this video again, share the link in the chat box. So later in 2-3 minutes, as I can see, everyone has joined. Let's dive into today's topic, that is space, form, and structure, designing experiences through shape function. Before we proceed further, allow me to introduce experts of the day. Architect Rahul Sharma, Assistant Professor, Department of Architect, dedicated architect and urban designer creating user-centered, community-driven spaces. He creates innovative context responsive spaces that integrated functionality and sustainability. So now I would like to introduce the admission nominee also in this webinar, Dr. Maninder Singh, Associate Professor and Admission Coordinator at Mittal School of Business, lovely professional university. He has an impressive academic portfolio with 11 research papers, 2 patents, and 3 book chapters. Before we proceed further in today's session, I would like to request everyone for any questions you can write in the chat box or in the Q&A box, and same will be addressed from my side in the end of this webinar. Now I'm going to hand over this session to our expert, Architect Rahul Sharma, and it would be an absolute delight to listen from him. And I will be also joining you all as attending, as it's always great to learn something new. Over to you, Architect Rahul Sharma.
Thank you, ma'am. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, the screen is visible. You can continue.
Yeah. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. This is the architect Rahul Sharma. Currently, I am the HOD Department of Design and an assistant professor at School of Design, lovely professional university. Here we have interior and furniture design, product and industrial design, and UI UX design. So today we are going to talk about a topic which talks about space, form, and structure, which
Yes, please continue.
I'll reshare my screen just a minute.
Okay, no problem.
So when we start the session, we are going to understand how these three things, that is space, form, and structure, are related and how they are interdependent of the different elements of design that we study and talk about, and then we apply into practice. Then we are also going to talk about how exploring design is going to help us, shaping every element, the character, the form, the feel, the material, the texture, different elements and principle of design into that as well. And the third aspect that we are going to talk about is the spatial thinking. The first part is that how we visually access and analyze the building and what type of spatial relationship with respect to one element or the component of the building forms for the other. Dalvinder ma'am, I think there is an issue with the interface. It's not getting, the slides are not getting moved.
I change the slide.
Yes, ma'am. Should I share my file with you once?
Again, you just share the screen. Yes.
All right. So the first thing that we are going to talk about is the space. So space is something that is what, when we talk about space in general, it is something that we experience. So in your day-to-day life, from your past experiences, you must visit a place, you have experiences attached to it. So it's not just the experience of experience, but it is the experience that is created by the space itself, which is the floor, the column, the wall, the fenestration, the building facade, the staircase design, and the ceiling or the roof. And form is something that we see, that can be seen. So as also in the picture that you can see, there is a form that is there, and you can understand the formation, the transient in the surface, how the surface is being curvilinear space, and all of those things. Whereas in structure is something which is built. So it talks about the inner core of any space and form, that how that structure and how that built form is going to be built. So when we talk about space, so we understand what space is. So space is a three-dimensional void, okay, that has some occupancy, that has some definition, and that inhabits people. So anything that is a three-dimensional void, or that is in volume and that has inhabitation capacity, is identified as space in general, or a layman language. But when we talk about design, we have two aspects in space. The first aspect is positive space, and the second aspect is the negative space. The positive space is the space which has some volume attached to it. It could be wall, it could be mass, or it could be any built element. It could be the ceiling here, it could be the coffer slab here, it could be the curvilinear building. The partitions that are going here in the picture that you can see are the positives, whereas the negative is something which is around and between the elements. So the element, the floor that you can see, the space that you can see in this room, or that is presented in the picture, is something we classify or identify as negative space.
So you just continue as it is.
I think
come up with the full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why it is.
Yeah, I don't need to come up with full screen. Just change the slides as it is. Please share your screen. Yes. Just change the slides as it is. There's no problem. You just continue. Over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, then we talk about the characteristics of a space. So space is not just based on a single quality or or one aspect. It is a spectrum, that how we visualize the space, how we understand the space, what kind of periphery treatment is given on the space, what kind of movement, circulation happens, and ultimately how that space is going to be used. If the space is not going to be used by the end of the day, it means it becomes a dead space if there is no function attached to any of the space related to it. So the first aspect that we talk about is the open versus closed. So as also you can see in the picture that the pictorial representation, that how we understand the openness versus enclosure spaces. So as a designer, it is very important that you understand what kind of spaces or what kind of functions needs to be a part of the open versus the closed aspects in the enclosure. All the private spaces that we design, from your bedrooms to your your washroom areas, your secluded spaces, all will be closed. Whereas if we talk about in a residential space, open spaces, all your foyers, your public spaces, your congregation spaces, all of these will come in your open spaces, just as an example of a courtyard and a corridor around it in the house. Then we talk about the linear versus radial. So as you can see, the movement and the placement of the mass, the built form in a manner which is linear in nature, is called linear guide, and wherever it is radial with respect to the one centroid that is present, so that is called radial. So now in this modern day example could be garden city, it could be example of any node that is present, any landmark building that is present in and around the city. It could be at a city level, it could be at a building level as well. Then we talk about public versus private. So all the public spaces are the gathering spaces, and they are the congregation spaces. So when we design public spaces, we need to identify and we should have the idea of how many people are it going to accommodate. So when we design a public space versus, like for example, a hotel versus a house, the need of the space, the function of the space, the layout of the space shall be very different in both the aspects, because the use of the space is very different. That is private in one aspect, and the second aspect it's public. And the last part, we talk about static versus dynamic. So where we talk about static spaces which are like restful in nature, wherever dynamic spaces are something which are always in motion, energy, and flow. So if you see, when there is a space in a space, any settling object, any settling space within a space is the example of a static space. Whereas the dynamic space is something which is an additive or subtracted form of an original form or a built mass or a building design. Now, when we talk about form after the space, it talks about the visible identity of a design, that how the design or how it appears to us, to naked eyes, to any. For example, we are walking around the market, we are walking around the city, we are going out, we are traveling. The first thing that we see is the form of the building or the form of any built structure or built mass in and around us in our day-to-day life also. So it is not something which is built on its own. It is a additive aspect, or it is a progression of space, shape, structure, and volume. What is the 3D volume of it? How it is built, that is the structural aspect, and shape is the 2D form on which the form it is based on. So when we talk about form, the first aspect we talk about is the geometric form. So it is derived from mathematical shapes, which are precise, ordered, often, and rational character. This means they will have definitive edges, surfaces, vertex, corners, clean dimensions, and clean shape. So nothing is going to be additive and form subtractive in this, as you can see in the picture also. So in the picture above on the slide, you can see different cuboids. You can see a cylinder, you can see a pyramid, you can see a sphere, you can see a triangle, you can see a cube. Whereas when we do the opening of a form, any form that we talk about, so you have for example, we have a tetrahedron. So that is a repetitive form. So that is also geometric in shape, which is repeated over and over again to make the final form, as you can see here in the picture as well. Wherever when we talk about organic forms, these are the forms which are inspired by nature, which are depiction of fluidity, irregularity, and expressive of natural growth and movement. As the sketches below show the shell structure, or they're aspired from a natural being, and that is present in and around that environment, and how the transcend and how it transports and takes the final form of a built-up space that is going to be used. Now, space is something that how it is going to be used, and form is something which is going to be seen and encloses the space in and around it. That is the idea. When we talk about form in design, so basically form aspect is not just the decoration. When we talk about form in design, it is something that is not decoration. It is something we apply to the space. It is something which is the primary communicator that will communicate what is the identity, purpose, and character of that space or the building that you are designing. Okay, so here when we talk about aesthetic, so they not just work on the visual appeal, or they work on the emotional resonance as well. What kind of material, as you see in this picture, so it talks not just about, this is a sitting space, or it's a furniture, or it's like a sculpture that is kept. It also talks about the texture. It talks about what, like a recreational space, what kind of sofa or what kind of furniture will go in what kind of space. Will it go into a living area? Will it go to a lounge? Will it go to a balcony? Will be a part of a bedroom? Will it be a part of an office space, commercial detail, etc., etc.? So the aesthetic part is a very integral part in form, which will decide that what kind of emotional resonance or visual appeal does they have. For example, we have a very definitive form. For example, let's take an example of a chair. So when you have a chair which is like a lounge chair versus a chair that you use as an office chair or your study table chair. So the form of both, now in general or on core, these both are examples of a chair. But with respect to their application, with respect to their use, with respect to how they are going to function, the form, the aesthetic, the visual appeal also vary. And that is how when you see a chair, we identify, okay, this is fit for a study chair, this is fit for a lounge chair, this is fit for a recreational aspect. Then comes functionality, how the form is going to be used. Now, for example, if you see in these two pictures, this is one of the examples of a pathway that you have designed. So when we talk about designing pathways, or when we talk about designing public spaces, we understand how it is going to be functioned. So for example, designing a form which resonates with the plinth, then we have a ramp, which you also call slope, and then you have staircase. So understanding the transient from this level to that level, we need to understand how and it is going to be applied, and what kind of form is going to be a bridging gap between these two levels, and how it is going to be used. Functional. For example, why this person with a wheelchair, if there is only staircase on this level and there is no slope or there is no ramp, the functionality of the space would become zero, or it will diminish. Similarly, here it is like a recreational space. So they have green spaces, they have a proper slope ramp traveling from the beneath level to an above level. So it also creates like a recreational space because it's a public building, it's a public space. So it becomes a congregation space, it's become a relaxing space, it becomes a space where public, people can sit together, they can chat together, and it becomes a active space instead of a dead space. And the final aspect talks about the user experience. What kind of quality are we giving through the form? For example, if this example that talks about life and work, so if this is the aspect, there is any building or any space that you want to design, which is going to be a combination of both. It could be a studio apartment, you're a designer and you want to build up your residential quarters also along with. So how the form is going to be reflected in the design that you create, how both the functions will be reflected into the form that you create. You could play with levels, you could play with the form, you can see the curvilinear that is going around, and how you balance them into an ultimate form that is going to be the structure or the built-up space that you are going to use or live in and function day-to-day function. So depending on what kind of context, what kind of function that you're designing in, the form is very much responsible for our user experience. For example, the design in the form of your classroom, the design and form of your bedrooms, the design and form of the parks, the design and forms of any public plazas, public squares. Every form varies from one to another because of the function and the user experience that they are going to give at the end of the day to the people who are going to use. Okay, so we have irregular forms, we have curvilinear pathways in parks, but we do not have that in residential buildings because that is not the experience we are trying to create there. So that is how the form is transcended, how the form translates the aesthetic, the functionality, and the user aspect dimension into the form when we talk about design. Now, when we talk about elements of design, The first part that we talk about is point. So they are divided into 6 parts. Then we have plane, then we have texture, then we have line, then we have volume, and then we have light and shadow. So what the idea is that point is obviously a position in space, the origin of all form. So even if we talk about line, so line is also something which is a collection of the form. It defines your edge, it defines the boundary. So line is also going to be originated from a point which is anywhere in the space. Okay, then line is an extension, it is an edge, it is direction, it is movement. Then we have plane. So plane, again, it is a flat 2D surface, which could be walls, floors, or ceilings when we talk about elements of form and space. And then we have volume. Obviously, that is the three-dimensional mass that we have, which is the substance of form. For example, I'll explain the same through the graphical representation here. Then we have texture. What is the quality of the space? What is the quality of the form? The visual character. Is it coarse? It is grain? Is it smooth? Is it glossy? Is it matte? Etc. and etc. And then the last part talks about light and shadow. What kind of areas which are going to be having access to light, contrast, and shadow. So if you see here, you can see the origin, if this is my point. So origin of all the line, which is giving us clear boundary and movement. And these are all the curvilinear lines that are going in and around. Okay, and whereas if we talk about plane, so we know what kind of plane. So this is the surface, that is the roof that is being developed there and then. And then the volume. So what kind of volume? So you can see this is sort of a parametric design here in the sketch, which talks about the volume. So we know, okay, this part of the building or this part of the space is going to be a little elevated than the rest of the building. So this is what the volume talks about. So when we talk about the texture, so the hatching and the shading that is done talks about what kind of texture and feel we are trying to give to the space in terms of the movement, in terms of the circulation. It is going to be a pathway. So here we have our core spaces. We are going to have our outdoor kind of tiles here, wherever. This is all the indoor and the interior space. And light and shadow talks about these nooks and the corners and the common spaces and the voids which are being created within the building. So within the spatial layout that we are going to design ultimately, and how the form and the built form is going to feel like. So this is just the concept idea that we start from. But here also you can see all till this conceptual idea and the ideation stage, your space and form is something which is the base of your design. That is the basis of your design that you start developing your further ideation on. Obviously, then the structure will come on the later part of it. But when we talk about any design idea, when we talk about any design ideation, concept development, form evolution, this is the stage where it all starts from, starting from 2D to its 3D visualization that is done, applying all the elements of the form and space into it. Then we talk about the principles that we talk about form development. So the first part again is functionality. It is a very one of the master architects and designers saying is form follows function. So whatever form that you have designed is going to follow the function that is going to happen into the space, into that form. For example, a hospital building is very different from a mall. A mall is very different from a house. A house is very different from a bungalow. A bungalow is very different from a resort. A resort is very different from a cafe. That is why it talks about that form follows function, that what kind of form is going to allow the functions that are going to ultimately happen into that building. The purpose that we are designing that building for is going to be fulfilled or not depends on the form of the building, not the space. Space is something that you have thought about and then further developed your form. The second aspect that talks about it is the context. When we talk about context, obviously context means designing and understanding wherever you are designed your form in. Okay, the site, the climate, and the surroundings. When we study this, there is a lot of examples we call skyline of a lot of famous cities, like skyline of Dubai, skyline of London, skyline of UAE, skyline of Paris. So why we are talking about this? Because they have designed in the context. So in the skyline, everything should look aligned. Everything should not be overemphasizing the other thing. For example, those who have seen Chandigarh in pictures or in person, you will understand that how all the houses, all the built mass, the form, everything is uniform and common. So no building or no form is trying to supersede the another, unless and until we want to design a form, we want to design a building which is a landmark building. A landmark building is going to stand out because of the function it is going to be working on, that is going to be having a very clear cut and a definitive form than the other parts. Giving an additive example on this is when you see Jaipur or when you listen the word Jaipur, you understand how the Jaipur city is going to be looking like. Red sandstone, traditional architecture, arches, jharokas, jalis, and all of those things. But when you see the main main pathway or the circulation that is of the Jaipur building, they have a World Trade building that is there, which is in completely glass facade. So that is how we are not understanding the context, or that is how we are trying to create an effect that our building stands out through the form, through the material, through the texture, through the proportion and scale with respect to the context that we are designing. So that is where the context plays a major role. The design elements that you're going to apply when you're designing in, for example, Himachal is not going to be similar that you're going to apply in Delhi, versus not going to be similar when you're designing in Kerala, which is not going to be similar when you're going to design in Northeast. So understanding the context remains a very crucial aspect as a designer's mindset, because you will understand and you will resonate, and then you will empathize and you will design and build accordingly. Okay, and then comes the materiality. In materiality, obviously construction logic, what is locally available, what kind of construction techniques that they have been applying in. For example, in the coastal regions or the north, they do a lot of bamboo, but we do not see bamboo construction here in north, or let's say in Haryana, Delhi, or Punjab, because we understand the construction logic, and the people who have been constructing the material is suitable in what kind of context also represents its expression. Okay, so that is very important. So like if we see the evolution from kacha houses to semi-pakka, then pakka, and what kind of modern architecture and design that we are building in today's day and age is completely different and definitive of the materiality, starting from mud walls, lime plaster, forts, so forth and so on. And then obviously the fourth element talks about is the principle is proportion and scale. Human dimension is very important whenever we are designing for any user. We need to identify firstly what is a user group. You design a chair, for example, for a kid, or you design a furniture for a playway school. It will be a very different scale and proportion with respect to the proportion that you will give in the middle school or in the senior school or in college, university. So that is the difference between the human dimension, and that is going to be the aspect where proportion and scale comes into play. Also, visual harmony and resonance. You will look at that design, you will look at the form of that furniture, or will look at the form of that product. You will understand where and when it is going to be applied and how it is going to be used. So the applicability part is also very important with respect to proportion and scale. Okay, so if you're designing for, let's say we are designing for inclusive design, or we are saying we are designing universal design. So our furniture, our layout, our proportion and scale should be inclusive to all. Someone, for example, if you design a house or you design a public building, so if someone who is differently able should be able to enter the building. For example, someone who is on wheelchair because of some mishap, they should be able to enter and access the building. So this all things come in proportion and scale, and it comes in the functionality aspect. So when we talk about form, it should not just be the aesthetic part of it, or just to have a wow or amazing aspect to it, but also fulfilling all the four of these principles that are very important into this. So that is the important aspect in them. When we talk about, then we talk about the form composition. So when we talk about form composition, it is basically when we talk about the arrangement of different form and different elements to give it a coherent and a cohesive space, which is expressive in nature. So it makes sense, it is expressive, it is aligning with another, even if the forms are varying in terms of, if you can see here, that there we have squares, and then we have a cuboid here, and then we have a frustum sort of form, which is a cuboid that which is chamfered at one of the edges. So here we talk about symmetry, which is balanced, and asymmetric, which is dynamic. So here every form is repetitive in nature and it is symmetrical in nature. Whereas this is balanced, but it is not symmetrical. So that is the composition we are talking about. Then obviously we have the visual weight. What kind of, for example, you enter a space, you enter a building, you enter any house, you enter a public mall, etc., etc., you would feel that one part of the building is heavier than the other part of the building. The visual weight that is being carried there is there. And rhythm talks about the repetition of the pattern that you can see. So here also it is rhythm because they are only using two forms, but what is differentiating is the weight, the visual weight. Obviously, this is mass. This mass is heavier than this. This is heavier than this, so forth and so on. But here, when we are using the same in the same weight, in the same proportion, in the same manner, that creates the rhythm. Then we have dominant and subordinate elements. So here you can see the central part of this composition is the cube, which is in terms of in scale and proportion is also the dominant part. Okay, so that is why here it is very important when we talk about the dominant part is this remains the dominant part and others are the subordinate elements which are attached and interdependent on this. If we remove this from this composition, perhaps all the buildings or all the masses which are placed in a certain manner will lose their meaning and impact. Okay, so this in isolation also works. This with respect to the subordinating elements also work. But in terms of subordinate elements, if I remove or we remove the dominant element, this will lose its meaning and it will become isolated. Okay, so that is also important. Then in the last composition we talk about emphasis, how we are creating emphasis through size, shape, and texture. Something that needs to be emphasized on obviously will have a different scale and proportion. It will be elevated, it will have a different shape, it will have a different texture, versus something which do not or doesn't need to be emphasized will be smaller in terms of shape, size, and texture. For example, in this aspect, if I take this composition emphasis, all these are spheres, all these are pyramids, and this is cube or cuboid. Automatically, this will create emphasis because this is of a different size, this different shape, and different texture. Texture means how the treatment of the facade of the outer layer of the surface is done. The appearance looks different. So when here in our school, when we start with such practices, we focus on how we are going to develop the form or different compositions of any space, any built-up form. We start with the sketching exercise. So these are few of the examples that you can see that how we lead to development of form, evolution, and space. Here also from this form, additive, subtractive, placement of and repetition of these spaces, and then movement. And here also in this sketch also that you can see how we are trying to create a cutout space and how we are trying to break these all the similar kind of forms into a multiple forms and create a space that is a public space within the final form that we are designing. Then we have the last leg of the form, space, form, and structure. That is the structure aspect. So basically, structure is the core. It is the internal framework that supports the form. Whatever you want to design, whatever you want to visualize, whatever, wow, amazing aspects that you want to create in the building, in the form, in the facade, that is going to be supported by the structure on its core. So that is basically the framework on which the form rests. It provides stability, it provides strength, and it provides the durability. A lot of times you will see structure as a visual aspect of a design. A lot of times it will be hidden. So it could be both. It could be, it could be either a visible aspect or a visible surface, or it could be something which is covered and layered. So the first is the load-bearing structure that which we talk about, where you can see also in the picture, the wall carry the load to the foundation. So this is our superstructure and foundation is our substructure. Wherever in the frame structure you can see columns and the columns and beams, they become a skeletal system, which we see mostly in public buildings also, because the span or the expense of one floor slab is uh, greater. So the height or the span is higher as compared to other residential or private buildings. So this is the skeleton system that we're talking about that is in place. So these are the vertical aspects. We're talking about columns, and then we're talking about beams, and then you have your floor slabs. The third aspect is the shell structure. So the shell structure here is the curved surfaces that will form all the space. So from our historical evolution in terms of buttresses, walls, domes, all of these parts becomes the shell structure. The tombs of all the gurudwaras, the temple shikras, etc., are something which we have learned and traced down the evolution of that structure from our history to the modern day architecture and design. Then last, we have tensile structure, cable, and the other membranes. A lot of time in the evolution that is happening in the current times, you see a lot of bridges being made, a lot of your resort, or, a lot of your structures in resort that are being made. These are tensile structures. So you have cable and membrane, they pull across, and they form the final structure, which is kind of similar into this shape and form which is presented in the sketch here is those are called the tensile structures. Then when we talk all of these in one, so we need to understand the design is not out of space, form, and structure, or just related to one, or just interdependent on one. It is a relationship of all these three things, which is space, form, and structure. So it means between what holds, what shapes, and what is felt. So what holds is the structure, what shapes is the form, and what is felt is the space. So every building, every design that you curate, that you develop, that you ideate, that you evolve should be based on all the three parameters to make it a cohesive and a complete design overall. Okay, so then what kind of aspects relate our form and structure? So what kind of decisions, what kind of prerequisites are there? Obviously, first, the site conditions, the topography. Is it a plain land? Do we have contours on the land? All of these things will come in picture. Climate. Again, this example I've already given you before in the discussion also, that what kind of climate we are designing in. So our form will resonate to the climate. Is it a harsh climate? Is it a cold climate? Is it a composite climate, moderate climate? So that will be replicated and that will be perceived, and then we'll design and develop the form on it. Material availability. Locally resources material are a great aspect when we talk about sustainable design, when we are moving forward in today's day and age. So what we should always depend on material and use materials in our design and the final form and facade, the materials which are locally available to us. And then we have technology, obviously with the advancements and with the modern age design that we are talking about, or rapid design that we are talking about, technology also plays a very important role. So for example, now we are moving to 3D printing houses. We are moving to net zero energy efficient houses. So what kind of technology are we going to use and integrate, and what kind of form and structure is then going to develop is also an important aspect. Then we have the cultural context, where we talk about history, identity, meaning that shape and forms the community. Every space that we design, or you are going to design, or any designer or architect designs, is an integral aspect and representation of the cultural context of the people, of the user that they are designing for. So the history, the identity, if it is, for example, let's say the evolution from civilizations to huts, to havelis, to modern day houses, to plotted development, to now what we are living in, minimalism, or contemporary architecture and design, where we are using geometrical forms. But understanding that history, where in Himachal they're using wood, they're using wood carvings, they're using it in ceiling, they're using it in building facade and other things. So that is the cultural context and identity they represent. In South, they have buildings which they have design in the houses, they have courtyards in the houses, they have sloping roofs. Again, cultural identity, context, and climate remains a very important role that how you're going to design a building. Okay, when you're designing, for example, any religious institution building, we always design it on elevated levels because of the cultural context or identity or belief system that the platform should be raised off where we keep the deity or wherever the platform we're going to perform our main rituals and puja. So the cultural context will shape the form, it will shape the space that you have thought you're designing for, and ultimately your form will lead to what kind of structure it will be needing to support at its core. Okay, then we have modern day design. Obviously parametric is something which is up and coming, where we have algorithm systems to generate complex designs, as you can see, multiple repetitive design, modulate of one module, and then we create different modules from that core module. Parametric design. Responsive architecture and design, which is at the core related to climate. It's dynamic and it's not static. It means it will be something which is changing and evolving over the period of time, and it's not static, something which is made. For example, we are using flexible interiors, furniture in interior design spaces when we design co-working space or office spaces. Because once, for example, a table is kept or a desk is kept, it is not going to be the permanent positioning of it. It is going to be with respect that if you're accommodating 20 people, so if you accommodate 30 people, so we can maneuver around, we can realign, and we can, because of the flexible furniture design that is present, we can use that space also in multifunctional ways, and we can use that furniture or that product also in a multifunctional way. So that becomes a aspect of responsible architecture and design. Last, we have sustainable forms, which are based for maximum gain on terms of energy, light, and environmental performance without exploitation or exhaustion of a renewable resource, non-renewable resources. That is also very important. When you design, as designers, we should have this inclination that we should design buildings and spaces which are sustainable in its approach, that they sustain without, for example, if I ask you to remember or recall, which was the last building you went into interior space which could function without AC? So it will take us back to history. It will take us back to, Havelis, forts, castles, palaces. Because then we were understanding the function, we were understanding the context, we were understanding, obviously at that point of time, we did not have resources, but those buildings or those spaces, those forms still function. They are, a custodian of something that we call sustainable architecture and design. So learning from them and deriving from them and applying in today's day and age also is becoming the need of the hour when we talk about sustainable form. For example, I'll give you an example of Kutch, Gujarat. So you design circular huts there. No one is designing, geometrical like cube or cuboid, because that area is prone to higher earthquakes on a higher Richter scale. So the form, that is curved form or a circular form or a sphere form, is proved to be more reliable and more dependent in terms of the resonance or damage control in terms of a earthquake. So that is why they are designing sustainable forms there, which will not collapse or damage or deconstruct at times of an earthquake if and when there comes. So that is also an example of sustainable form. You design with respect to whatever is there, also the resource part also, but with respect to the context, with respect to the responsive architecture and design that we are talking about. So here I'm just showing you few works of a student that we do in multiple exercises of space, form, and structure at School of Design. So you can see how students are developing in terms of sketches, in terms of, they are developing the structure. This is biomesh and how it is going to be intertwined, the joinery. Here they talk about the form. Again, in the bamboo structure, they talk about construction, which is again the form and the structure part of it. Here they talk about the space which they are creating. They are creating a sitting space, but also with respect to a sitting space, how the form around it is being developed and created. And here they are also creating a sitting space, but with respect to an outdoor space. So you can see the form, which is a shading, because it is going to be an outdoor sitting. So how that shading is going to be a part of that form is very important. Just imagine this structure or this form without the shading device. It will not be used. Ultimately, it will lead to a space which becoming like a dead space or a negative space, because it is losing on its functional aspect. So this is how you evolve from structure, from your space to form and to structure. So concluding today's session again with what we started is, I hope when you go through the PPT, when you understand the space now, space is something that you experience through movement, light, proportion, scale, grandeur. So all of these things make importance in experiencing of a place. As designers, we always emphasize on improve the experience of how the space is going to be, be felt. Then we have form, something obviously which is going to be seen, has its own identity, meaning. For example, if we talk about Lovely Professional University, or we talk about LP in general, people who have visited, people who have seen it in pictures, they have a visual identity of the form, of the scale, of the momentum of the campus, the building, the built mass, all of those things. So that is the form resonance of the design that you create. And structure is something that you built it on and is visible at all times. And obviously, to create a complete design or a cohesive design, all these three aspects should work together. They are interdependent on each other. They evolve together. They evolve with each other, and they work well in coherence with each other. That's all from my side. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Architect Rahul Sharma. So now I would request to admission nominee, Dr. Maninder Singh, to be on the screen. Over to you, Dr. Maninder Singh.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, one and all present. I'll be discussing about the university, its features, and few aspects that what you will be including when you are taking admission. So basically, right now the trends are moving from a general perspective of a particular program to an international level or a global level. So we have all these kind of programs that include international tie-up or global immersion or work integrated or even semester exchange programs. And once when we select a university, we look over these factors like accreditation, placement, or some people look for extracurricular activities as well. I'll talk about my accreditations of the university. University is NAAC A++ graded, and we scored 3.668 score, that is on the scale of 4, which is the highest among all. We are UGC accredited university, and even single department of a university is accredited to some of the other accreditation. For example, if I say ICAR is accredited for agriculture program. If you talk about the design program, we are accredited with Council of Architecture, and ITP, that is Institute of Town Planners. If we talk about placement, placement has grown from last many years. It is growing. We are having 100 plus recruiters, and even Fortune Global 500 companies are there that are coming to our university. Highest package, if we talk about, it is 2.5 crore rupees till now. Vishnu, he is the student of our university who has attained this. Then even 1 crore, 64 lakhs, 62 lakhs, 54 lakhs. These are the packages that are highest in terms of placement. On a generic note, also some companies are there like Plato, Malto. They are also giving 50 lakhs or 44 lakhs, like this kind of packages they are providing us. So if we talk about the industry immersions, these are some of the academic oriented things where some industries as well as the leaders of industry, they have been teaching some of the programs to us. If we talk about university rankings, we stand 31st in terms of university ranking. And if we talk about individual ranking, then also it is mentioned on the slide as well. On the Times Global ranking, we rank 5th, and we have a study abroad option also. Like some students go to a semester exchange program, they study for 1 semester in foreign nation. Some students go for international credit transfer, they may go for 5 to 7 days or 15 days. So these kind of things are available when we have some options of study at LPU. So this is some examples of those students, those who have studying abroad through LPU. Curriculum is flexible, outcome-based, and always skill-oriented and industry-oriented here, and specializations and many other exposures are available in the curriculum. If we talk about extracurricular activities, sports is one of the activity that we are also promoting. Students of LPU, they were into the Olympics 2024 also, Neeraj Chopra, hockey players, and many more. And even if we talk about the fest and all, the exposure is too good. We conducted Indian Science Congress also at LPU. We have a startup school at LPU. If you have some startups and you want to pitch in for the startup, we provide 3 to 5 lakh rupees for the investment of that startup as well. Many renowned personalities, as I'm scrolling through the slides, you can see visited LPU, and they have given their advices, and many personalities have visited. So it is kind of an holistic development, and the LPU is also renowned for one more thing, that is infrastructure. You can see the glimpse of our LPU campus. We have a uni hospital inside. We have gymnasium. We have labs inside, computer labs, library. A total shopping mall is inside the campus. Auditorium, which is having a capacity more than 2,000 people. One big thing that is started a few years back, that is indoor stadium. So you can see the glimpse of indoor stadium. We have badminton court, basketball court, indoor shooting ranges. They are indoor. An Olympic size swimming pool is also there. And the residential part, that is hostels, they are also inside the campus and are ragging free. If I talk about the LPU Nest, we are providing scholarships that are up to 11.2 lakh rupees. And if we talk about some students who may not join LPU, but they are very elite in their studies and they join some reputed universities like IITs, IIMs, and they have a good score at LPU also, or the highest scores at LPU also, then we provide 1 lakh rupees as a study grant also. And over a years of 7 years, we have awarded around 10 crores in study grant. If I talk about the timeline for design programs, it is ongoing. The LPU Nest exams are ongoing, but last date of admission is 25th. And any student who want to apply for LPU Nest, they can apply for any selected date, just has to apply for that exam 3 days prior to that exam. And some of the exams are there where LPU Nest is not mandatory, means programs where direct admission is available. In that also, the tests are ongoing. People can give tests after taking admission as well. And the last date of admission is 25th of April. We have a number of scholarships based on work experience, national level tests, innovation startup, or bravery, social service. Even defense personnel, the awards, teachers, the awards, often economically weaker section, single girl child, single mothers, especially disabled people. All these people have scholarships at LPU. Just to give you a glimpse, we have a 100% scholarship bracket also, where toppers like board toppers or national university toppers, they are having 100% scholarship. Or if you talk about on the level of 12th, students who have 80% and more in 12th, they are having scholarships. They will be getting scholarships, and students who have 70% or more in graduation, they can also get scholarships at LPU. So in the end, I'll just say, try to give your best for this LPU Nest and try to at least go through the counselings of LPU. Be a good citizen and contribute to the cities, your university. I'll just move to one page to show you how you can visit our LPU page. This is our university page, that is lpu.in. So in this page, you can just go to the admissions part, and if you are working for a work integrated program, industry oriented program, you can scroll through different programs. I'll just click you on a regular program. So if you are, let's say 12th, pursuing or pass out recently, so you can move to different disciplines which are mentioned here. You can see all the disciplines are mentioned here, and you can click on design if you want to go for the design program. And you can find all the design programs available here. If you want to go for interior and furniture design, you can find the available programs under that category. You can click on any one. Suppose you want to go for BSc furniture design, then all the details, curriculum, fees, scholarship, everything, even the eligibility part, everything is mentioned on this particular website. The placements, ranking, the curriculum part, what you will be talking year 1, year 2, year 3, and all those things. And if you want to apply, you can click on this apply now button, and you can register yourself with your phone number and email ID. You will get an OTP, and then you can register. A portal will be created where you can apply for LPU Nest and even take admission. That's all from my side. Over to you, Galinda.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maninder Singh. As I can see, there are some questions from our participants. Can we take the questions, Dr. Maninder and Architect Rahul Sharma?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So Manesh
आता है ना?
Can you please stop sharing your screen, Dr. Maninder?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Manish Preet is with us. Manish is asking, how do space and form influence user experience in design?
Yes. Well, Manish, when we talk about space and form in user experience in design is uh, every space that you're going to design is going to have a function. So firstly, when we identify what kind of function for the space that you're going to design in is going to relate to the user experience. For example, a university campus, the form and the space in that will be very different from a residential building or a residential space you're going to design. Because the function and the movement pattern, the circulation, the layout of both these spaces and the forms is going to be very different. So that is where the user experience comes in play, that what kind of space and the use and the function of the space is going to be ultimately used by the end user. According to that, you will maneuver around the space and the form. So this is how it will guide you for a better user experience into a building. When we talk about, for example, the ramp example that I showed you, in public buildings, we need to understand that we need to cater for all the users. In residential design or residential space, you might forgive designing a ramp or a slope for inclusive design. But in a public building, we could not look over or we could not underestimate the power of a simple ramp for giving a better user experience to someone who is differently able. So that is how it guides, or it is a guiding dot, which will build on space, then form, and then finally giving a better user experience.
So thank you, Architect Rahul Sharma. It's Manish Preet. I hope you got your answer from our expert. Let me go to the poll questions. Dr. Maninder,
Yes.
the question is that, do you want to know about the study grant opportunities? The results are yes, they want to know. Students wants to know about the study grant opportunities.
Yes, the study grant option is that if you apply at LPU and you, like if I talk about the design programs, and if you get top 100 ranks in our LPU Nest exam, and then you join a reputed institute of design, then we are providing you, even if you don't join LPU, you join there, then we have provided you 1 lakh rupees as study grant. The result of study grant will be declared by the end of admission session, and that is most probably in the month of August. So by that time, we'll just display the result and along with the rank list. So if you fall in the top 100 and then you take admission in any good reputed university like NIDs, National Institute of Designs, then you will get this study grant.
Thank you so much. And the next question in poll is, do you want LPU office detail in your city? Can you please elaborate?
They are asking for the LPU office in the city?
Yes, LPU office in the city.
Okay, we have this option at lpu.in website. You can go on this website. You can just click on this icon here. There is a location icon. I'm not sharing my screen, I think. I'll just share my screen and show them.
Share your screen, please.
Yeah. So I hope it is visible. When you go on this site, there is this icon, lpu.in. On this, there's an icon of LPU office. So when you click on this LPU office, all the offices available throughout India, it is available here. You just have to search for your state. If suppose you are belonging to Haryana, you click on Haryana, and all the offices available in Haryana, it will be listed down here. And you can get the detail of the people, and then you can call them and book an appointment with them. So that is on LPU website itself.
Thanks so much. So Balkar is with us. Balkar is asking, how can designers balance aesthetics with functionality?
Well, that's an interesting question. How, as a designer, you will be able to balance aesthetic with functionality? I think, am I right? This was the question, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah. So see, when we talk about aesthetic, it is something that is the visual appealing part of any space or form that you are going to design. That is why we talk about that function is something which should not supersede the form, which should not supersede the form or the aesthetic. if at the end of the day, that space that you're designing is not functional and just aesthetically in approach and nature, that function is going to become a negative and a dead space. When we talk about the aesthetic part of it, you have different kind of play of form or composition. You can do attractive form, you can do subtractive form, you can do radial planning, you can do linear composition, you can do rhythm, you can do emphasis, like we have discussed in number of composition ideas. But at the same time, you need to understand the aesthetic is not going to be something that you create a greater aspect on the visual outer facade, and there is nothing in terms of functionality. So when you talk about balancing aspect, you need to decode that what kind of function that space is going to cater to. As long as you're not going to cater to a function, you're not going to cater to a space, the function of the space, you cannot develop the aesthetic of. Let me give you a very basic example. Have you ever visited a PVR cinema which is circular in nature? No, because we need to understand that we cannot compromise the function of the screen and the visibility of from every seat from first row to last seat. But we can do that in an amphitheater or an open performing stage where we can have this performing stage in the center, and then we can develop the form around it and aesthetic around it. So as long as you're not compromising with the function of the space that you're going to design and use, the aesthetic will play along as in branching out to elevate your design. Just the aesthetic is not going to be your design in all. Understand that how this interdependency is related and how the aesthetic will guide the form and then ultimately the structure and then the function. So that is important when you understand aesthetic. You should not overpower any design just with the aesthetic, but with zero form and zero structure or zero functionality. That will go other way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Architect Rahul Sharma. I hope, Balkar, you got your answer from our today's expert. And I hope everyone got their answers from our today's experts, Rahul Sir and Dr. Maninder Singh. So if anyone have any question regarding the admission, they just write on us at admission@lpu.co.in. And you can do WhatsApp chat with us. Our WhatsApp number is 985256900. I'm repeating the number, it's 985256900. And once again, thanks to our today's expert, Rahul Sir and Maninder Sir. So as we come to the end of this webinar, I want to express my deepest gratitude to our experts for sharing their valuable insights and expertise with us. If anyone wants to access this webinar again, they can visit our website, that is lpu.in. Under admissions, under this, you will find LPU Edu-Webinar. So you will find the past and upcoming webinars. And you can access this video on YouTube also. Stay connected with us for future webinars. Until we meet again. With the permission of my seniors, I will be signing. Take care and goodbye. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.